Irma was a record-breaking hurricane that officially began its trek to the Florida Keys on August 30th, 2017. On September 5th, Irma was a Category 5 and its winds peaked at 185 miles per hour the next day. Irma hit the Leeward Islands at peak strength. Irma made landfall on Cuba's northern coast late Friday night as a Category 5, but its land interaction weakened it to a Category 3. It re-intensified as it moved across the warm waters of the Florida Straits and made landfall on Cudjoe Key as a Category 4 at 9:10 Sunday morning, September 10, 2017. The northeast eye wall moved directly over the east side of Big Pine Key. Unfortunately for us, this is where we live and where my dad and I ended up staying during the storm. What are your opinions?
Of what?
Well, Chris, Maria, it's a beautiful.
Stop.
I need your reaction. We need to know what's going on. Michael needs to know.
Skip and do it later.
Do what?
The monster storm raging towards the Sunshine State. The governor there warning.
My original plan was to move from our ground level house into our new elevated house. The new elevated house had been under construction for a year and a half prior to Irma. It's pretty much done. It just needed to get the certificate of occupancy. So we went ahead and started moving there.
What do you think of what's going on?
What?
What do you think what's going on?
Shit. Gonna hit the fan. And I'm just getting ready for the shit.
So what are you doing right now?
Packing all the stuff that I might leave behind, but no, I don't want to.
And what about the other sofas?
That I don't know. I'm not gonna think about that. And then after that, we're gonna then tackle the kitchen.
All right.
And that's it. That's all I gotta say about that.
The next day, the Friday 2 p.m. advisory showed us right in the middle of the cone. Time was running out.
Morning, now we're hours later. The storm is closer to the United States. Give me a big picture, bird's eye view of the operation here and what your biggest concern is right now.
Well, right now, unfortunately, people in the Keys, anybody that stayed behind, the time to evacuate is basically running out.
Friday night, my neighbor, who's the county clerk, was in a meeting discussing with county officials what was going to happen to the lower Keys. When he got out of the meeting, he texted me and said, "You need to consider getting out of there." At that point, I said to my wife, "You need to go to the mainland," and I told my son Brian he has to stay back with me. There was just no way I could leave our company vehicles and equipment, plus we have a lot of real estate. I just couldn't leave it behind. Before it got too windy to be outside, we went on a little drive. We first went by our trailer on Avenue H. Since it was very close to the open water, we knew it would have problems. We then drove down the highway until we got to the mobile gas station in Summerlin Key. The drive was very surreal. There was no cars on the road and we did not see one person outside. It was like a daytime scene in a zombie movie. At 11:30, we got a band with a lot of rain and wind and decided to head back home. Once we got home, we took some final pictures of our ground level house and our little island.
Early Sunday morning around 4 a.m., things were picking up pretty fast. The northeast eye wall of the hurricane is the strongest part of the hurricane, and the front impact sliders were getting the brunt of that. So it was strong enough to push the water through the bottom corners of the slider tracks, and the water was basically just gushing out. So I did the best I could, grab whatever towels or sheets and try to dry it up. But it got to the point where the water was being pushed through the soffit vents and it was coming out of the fixtures and the outlets. So there wasn't really much stopping the water from getting inside. The front impact sliders, while they're built for conditions from a Category 5 hurricane, they still visibly shook and vibrated. Where we were was pretty much right at the edge of the eye. Although the eye did go over Big Pine, where we were kind of on the worst of it the whole entire time. We never got that tranquil, sort of serene, quiet period of time. Front of the house is being blasted with wind and rain. I was able to step outside onto the back balcony. An impact window inside one of the bathrooms facing north had a pretty clear view of the old ground level house we had been in prior to the hurricane. You can see the waves about 7 or 8 feet, almost touching the top of the building. No. Ugh. Once the eye passed over Big Pine, the wind shifted direction, so we were able to go onto the front balcony. The water was kind of receding at that point, but it was still pretty windy, so we kind of had to grab onto the columns and pillars in order to keep our stuff steady.
Around noon, we decided to go outside and assess the damage. Luckily, our dock survived, but we couldn't tell what happened to our little island. As I went into our old house, I realized how bad things were going to be. The kitchen was destroyed. Our master bedroom was full of seagrass and muck.
I told you the windows were taken out. And those are your what, regular windows?
No, those are intact. You see it didn't crack.
And it ripped it right out of the frame.
Water pressure. As we worked our way to the back of the house, things only got worse. The laundry room and gym was upside down. Our next stop was the ground level house next door. We then checked out my dad's rental house on the other side of ours. All of the soffits came off the main house, and a big ball of mangrove roots from 150 feet away ended up next to the pool. There was also a smaller ground level house and a separate 4-car garage on the same property. The ground level house was completely destroyed. We then decided to get our truck out of our elevated garage. Luckily, the truck was up high enough to stay dry. We were desperate to get our most important piece of equipment from our office before anyone would steal it. Fortunately, our skid steer was high enough on its trailer to stay dry. We used it to clear the road that goes from our street to the highway. After that, we called it a day. We started the day by taking a walk down the road where we live. With the exception of our new home, all of the houses on Warner Street sustained severe to catastrophic damage. Of the 15 houses, 2 were completely gone, 5 were teardowns, and 7 were heavily damaged.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the bird cage survived, but the house didn't.
The destruction on Avenue H was catastrophic. The damage to our trailer was much worse than I ever imagined. All that was left was the chassis.
poor cat. What was here? Oh my god.
In the Florida Keys, electricity, running water, gasoline, all very hard to find. And officials fear that a mass return to the islands could make a challenging situation even worse.
Key West is sort of the economic heart. It's part of the Keys that almost everybody knows best. And it did not suffer that severely. So I think the problem is to get to Key West, you've got to literally go through hell. Now, again, people coming back here are going to have it relatively well off. People who are up at Big Pine Key or just south of the 7 Mile Bridge are going to be devastated by what they find. And if you live there, there is a very good chance that your home suffered extensive damage. That sets up a whole other round of problems. So what will people do? Many folks are being told, pack your tent, pack your food, pack your water, and be ready to be heartbroken at sea, of course.
The hurricane destruction was much worse than I thought it would be. What happened is that you had these waves on top of the surge. I knew we were going to get surge, but I didn't know there were going to be these huge swells slamming into anything on the east side of Big Pine Key. I don't think we're going to have another direct hit like Irma, but we're definitely going to have surge. That's why all the houses are built on stilts here in the Keys. It's just a way of life. And an example is in 2005, we had Hurricane Wilma, which really wasn't much of a wind event, but the surge was very serious for the Gulf side of the Keys, including Key West. On this side, here in Big Pine Key, on the east side, nothing really happened. So everything depends on the angle of the hurricane, where the northeast eye wall is, and the level of destruction can vary from like very serious, what we had here in Big Pine with Irma. And Key West had relatively minimal damage from Irma. Over 2 years later, impact from Irma can still be seen on our street and other parts of Big Pine Key. There are mangroves that will never recover, docks that need to be repaired, houses that must be demolished, and vacant lots that are waiting for new homes. Buildings can always be rebuilt, but nature is inevitably going to have the upper hand, and the Keys are wide open to the effects of climate change. Irma, Michael, Maria, and Dorian are all recent examples of hurricanes that made landfall as a Cat 4 or 5. It's impossible to predict where the next major hurricane will make landfall. Only time will tell.